Und wir sind live. Hallo lieber Zuschauer, du bist hier genau richtig beim Cryptopia Coin Summit und heute haben wir einen ganz besonderen Gast und zwar Max Kordek. Max Kordek ist Founder und CEO von Lisk und die Leute, die jetzt ein bisschen länger im Krypto-Game drin sind, die kennen Lisk natürlich. Für die, die jetzt erst neu eingestiegen sind, nochmal so als kurze Recap. Lisk ist eigentlich eine der wenigen Urgesteine, vor allem eine der wenigen deutschen Urgesteine, die bis heute noch stehen, die sich bis heute weiterentwickelt haben und jetzt wird euch Max etwas über die, nächste Entwicklungsstufe von Lisk erzählen und über Interoperability im Detail berichten. Das heißt, du bekommst hier 1:1 Insiderwissen von einem der bekanntesten Leute auf dem Gebiet. Deswegen nutze die Chance, schreib auf jeden Fall mit und ganz, ganz wichtig, schreib deine Fragen in den Chat, die beantworten wir dann im Anschluss an die Präsentation, genau. Und ja, schreibt vielleicht mal in den Chat, ob ihr uns gut hören und gut sehen könnt. Ich denke aber, das...
Dazu auch guten Morgen von meiner Seite. Sagt gerne Bescheid, ob ihr mich sehen könnt und ob ihr mich hören könnt. Wäre sehr hilfreich.
Genau, aber ich glaube, so wie die Technik ist... perfekt, 1, ja, Fiat Manita schreibt 1, perfekt. Schön, dass du wieder da bist, Fiat Manita. Aurik ist auch wieder da. Cool, dann würde ich sagen, wir können losstarten. Jetzt ganz kurz für Leute, die jetzt neu beim Cryptopia Coin Summit sind. Geht auf cryptopia.cash, tragt euch da auf den Button die Mailingliste ein, ist kostenlos, dann bekommt ihr bei jedem Workshop ja eine Nachricht, ihr bekommt Aufzeichnungen und Handouts. Gut, dann würde ich sagen, übergebe ich an dich, Max, und bin sehr, sehr gespannt.
Ja, super, danke dir. Also guten Morgen alle zusammen, mein Name ist Max Kordek, CEO und Co-Founder of Lisk. Ich gebe die Präsentation auf Englisch, weil es gibt einfach so viele englische Begriffe in meiner Präsentation und ich bin es gewohnt, alles immer auf Englisch zu machen in der Blockchain-Industrie. Ich hoffe, das geht in Ordnung. Dann swipen wir mal direkt rein. Alright, okay, so today I'm going to give you a deep dive into blockchain interoperability with Lisk. And one more time in English, my name is Max Kordek, CEO and co-founder of Lisk. Please follow my channels if you want to stay up to date about Lisk and whatever else I'm working on in the blockchain industry. A quick disclaimer, blockchain is extremely hard, it's complex technology, so this presentation is also not easy, but I try to keep it as simple as possible. Sometimes I leave quite a bit away just to make it more understandable. But I think it's just necessary if you want to do proper either investments or evaluations of projects, that you understand the technology behind in the team and what the team is trying to achieve. Further, I think this conference is a little bit more finance orientated. I'm not a finance guy, I'm a pure tech guy. So whatever you see here is just for information purposes. It's not investment advice or anything like that. I just want to tell you more about blockchain interoperability, a topic I'm working on since over 5 years already. Today in this presentation, I quickly give you an intro about what is Lisk and how to develop a blockchain application with our tools and platform. And then I go to explain you much more about blockchain interoperability with all these different techniques and mechanisms available on the market today, or at least on which other people are working on. And then after that, I'm going to explain you what we are working on, what we just revealed a few weeks ago, the Lisk interoperability solution. And I think it's pretty important for you to know what kind of advantages interoperability in general brings. So I go into that a little bit as well. And just then a few next steps for our research and for Lisk in general, so that you're aware what's coming next and what I'm working on next. All right, so let's begin. So what is Lisk? First of all, Lisk offers JavaScript developers all required tools to build dApps on their own native blockchain. And currently we work on an interoperability protocol which will then connect these dApps to our blockchain, to the Lisk blockchain. And you see, I mentioned dApps on their own native blockchain, and that's why we are calling them blockchain applications. We're not using the terminology dApps, we're using the terminology blockchain applications. And we launched in 2016. As previously announced, we acquired an old project from back in the day, somehow like an OG ICO project, you could say that. We have a team of around 40 people. Some are in Berlin, some are in Zug. but the majority of the team actually sits in Berlin with all the developers, marketeers, researchers, business developers, and so on. And currently we have a funding of around $100 million. That all still stems from our ICO we conducted in 2016. So we are well funded. We're here to stay. We're a long-term project. We're not just a hype coin. We really want to focus on delivering good technology. If you're looking into our ecosystem, I would say it has 4 core components. The Lisk Sdk, which, SDK stands for Software Development Kit, somehow like a toolbox for developers to build apps. And in our case, of course, it's a toolbox for JavaScript developers to build blockchain applications. It's the Lisk blockchain, which we actually build ourselves with the Lisk Sdk. And the Lisk blockchain is home to the LSK token and the centerpiece of the Lisk ecosystem. And with Lisk Interoperability, which is brand new, just announced a few weeks ago, I will go into details later about that. Lisk Interoperability then connects these blockchain applications JavaScript developers are developing with the Lisk Sdk to our blockchain, to the Lisk blockchain, in order to create this ecosystem. And then the Lisk wallets, of course, provide the basic user interfaces for our platform. Our platform with interoperability is then a blockchain application platform on which multiple applications live and benefit from each other, because this interoperability can create quite a synergy between the different apps. More about that later as well in advantages. And at the end of the day, what we try to achieve is to make blockchain accessible. And I'm not speaking here only for the normal user by providing them more use cases and a great user interface to benefit from blockchain technology, but also I speak about developers who have like a very high entry barrier entering the space in general, because blockchain technology is extremely hard and developing your own blockchain application or just blockchain is really like expensive, time consuming, and so on. When we started in 2016, we took an existing code base of like a project my partner Oliver Beddoes and myself worked on before, and it took us around 2 years to bring that to stability and to a proper quality. And with the Lisk SDK, a developer nowadays can spin up their own blockchain within like 1 hour or something, and within probably like a week or so, they have a nice, simple proof of concept blockchain application already. So Lisk is all about making blockchain accessible from the developer standpoint and the regular user standpoint. And I talked a lot about how to use the Lisk SDK to build a blockchain application, but how does it exactly work? This is a bit technical now, but please bear with me. So essentially, the Lisk SDK, again, software development kit, is a set of libraries, so something like a toolbox that are used to develop blockchain applications. Again, blockchain applications are apps on their own native blockchain. And it is comprised of multiple tools in that toolbox. One of them is Lisk Commander, which is just kind of like a command line interface for developers to go in and generate like code skeletons and the basic blockchain, a white labeled blockchain to just get started. The Lisk framework, which actually, like you could say, has all the heavy stuff in it, what makes your blockchain application actually then a decentralized blockchain. And Lisk Elements, which is comprised of multiple libraries which handle very specific logic. For example, we have something called Lisk-cryptography, which handles all stuff around cryptography, like it has all the different curves and algorithms for that in it. We have one which is called Lisk P2P, which handles the peer-to-peer layer for the network so that nodes can interact and communicate with each other. So this is all the software development kit. It's all there already. It's all published. It's all open source. It's free to use. You can just jump on GitHub, our organization that's called Lisk HQ, and can basically just install it today, npm install it, and you're there, ready to use and ready to build a blockchain application. So that tool is used to build a blockchain application. So keep that in mind. We have the Lisk blockchain and a blockchain application, which, for example, could serve a different use case, like a prediction market, an oracle, a decentralized exchange, an NFT marketplace, an NFT game, whatever it is. And if we're then talking about blockchain interoperability, it's like a very big topic which got covered multiple times in the last few years. But just recently, we covered that topic with our own solution on Lisk.js 2021, which is our annual developer-focused event. So again, maybe not for you, but it's like pretty tech-savvy, pretty, like I would say, hardcore, like developer-focused. And this time around, it was a pure digital event. In 2019, it was a physical event only. This time, a digital event. We had 1,000+ registrations. And normally we do this once a year, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to skip it in 2020, but moved it then from end of the year to beginning of the year. So it was on the 21st and 22nd of May. And now it's going to happen all the time in spring, so next year as well. This time around, we had around 9,000 views so far, like pretty fast that went. So I'm very happy about that. It was a 2-day event. We had like 9 hours of content, 450 slides. It was huge for us. And there we presented the entirety of Lisk interoperability. And you can watch it on YouTube on our channel, Lisk HQ. So make sure to subscribe and watch the content if you're more tech savvy. However, in blockchain interoperability, there are many other solutions. And I would like to just give you also a bit of an overview about these. But before we do this, I want to explain you briefly what actually is interoperability. So I already said you have to keep in mind you have, for example, the Lisk blockchain and another blockchain or blockchain application with a different use case. Let's just say blockchain 1, blockchain 2. And these two blockchains are now interoperable if like a transaction in one blockchain can have an effect in another. And that could be, for example, a token transfer from blockchain 1 to blockchain 2. So let's say a user is like executing a transaction in blockchain 1, which has the purpose of transferring these tokens into blockchain 2. But you have two distinct blockchains, two different networks. So you cannot just move it over. What essentially happens is on the blockchain 1, this transaction is being called. And on blockchain 2, it actually sees that and, well, is creating then these tokens, making them available for the user, while on the blockchain 1, they're kind of locked or burned. That's why here on the presentation, it's also written like that on blockchain 2, the users credited pegged tokens because they're not really the original ones, but they are like a representation of them. So here I just gave you an example of a token transfer from blockchain 1 to blockchain 2. That's like the interoperability everyone like is largely speaking about. But interoperability is also just if in blockchain 1 something happens, let's say a transaction is triggered, and then in blockchain 2, because of that, something happens automatically, which might not actually be a token transfer, but it could be whatever it is. Like could be just a new transaction being called or triggered, and information becoming available, and so on. And why is that so important? So first of all, it's scalability. If you're looking at Ethereum, where dApps are all written on its one blockchain, on the Ethereum blockchain, obviously you're coming into scalability problems. So the Ethereum blockchain has limiting processing capabilities or capacity. Currently they support around 18 transactions per second. And I think there are approximately like 2 million smart contracts or so like published on the Ethereum blockchain. Just a very small subset of them are actually being used, but this just reveals the entire problem of scalability on, for example, Ethereum. That's why you have to pay like $70 in transaction fees sometimes. And if you now have interoperable blockchains they essentially allow you to scale the processing capacity or the transactions per second with the number of connected chains. So in our case, if you build a blockchain application, it can handle around 75 transactions per second. So a few more than Ethereum currently and many more than Bitcoin currently. And you have to imagine every new blockchain application added to the ecosystem supports, again, 75 transactions per second. So if you have 1,000 sidechains or blockchain applications in the ecosystem, you're speaking about 75,000 transactions per second. Of course, this only goes for each individual blockchain. If one blockchain becomes extremely successful, then, well, it runs into the same issues of scalability. If we're looking, however, at the most successful and popular DApp platform, Ethereum, and then again, the most popular DApp, I guess that's Uniswap, and they have like 300,000 transactions per day or something. So with Lisk, with 75 transactions per second, you're approximately at 6.5 million transactions per day. So you're looking at like another like increase of 20x, whatever, of higher throughput. So I guess that's quite nice for now, and definitely solves the problem of scalability. Also, any other blockchain application then added to our ecosystem will never suffer from this other blockchain, which is very successful because they're distinct. So they're not running into any problems. And if the one blockchain application is actually hitting the ceiling, they could maybe like add another blockchain application, another sidechain to it, which then again makes more room available. And the other reason why interoperability is so important is just flexibility. So if you have one blockchain, you have just a limited set of use cases. For example, you could have with Bitcoin just payments, or with Filecoin storage, but then with Ethereum, you have smart contracts, which expands that pretty much. However, it comes with certain sacrifices also on the code base for the different DApps. If you have your own blockchain application, your own blockchain, you can change everything you want. Like you can swap out the consensus algorithm, you can change the block time. Instead of making certain actions for each transaction, you could even make certain actions for each block coming in. And now if you want to update your blockchain application, that's not a big problem because, well, all the other blockchain applications really don't have to update or go along with your protocol upgrade. So it comes with much more flexibility for the developer. They basically have full control over their blockchain application. All right, and now coming into these various methods of interoperability available on the market. So we're going to talk about 4 different ones which are currently being worked on or available. Atomic swaps with Hlcs, federated two-way peg, optimistic rollups, and heterogeneous charting. Very, very high level. Just a very brief look into them. They're really complicated. So I'm just gonna show you a few advantages and disadvantages. Very quick intro what they actually are. But it serves more if you're interested then that you go to Google and just search for more material about these different techniques. Then I'm going to talk a little bit more about cross-chain updates because that's actually our solution, what we're working on. And then just for the sake of it, I added 3 other quite popular in the media and news solutions as well. But we're not going to go into more detail because they're even more complex, which would be Plasma Framework, Homogeneous Charting, and Zero-Knowledge Rollups. All right. So you heard before already, I said sometimes sidechain, blockchain 1, whatever. There are many different terms. So here's just a quick overview of different terminology these different techniques might use. If we're talking about blockchain 1 or the main blockchain, if that exists, then it's sometimes referred to main chain or central chart. And if it's a second chain, then that's often a side chain, a parachain, or just a shard. So don't get confused. What you just have to know is you have different blockchains. A shard is not always a full blockchain, sometimes just a ledger, but for interoperability in itself, this doesn't matter. So the first method available on the market today, this is pretty old already, available since many years. This is atomic swaps with HTLCs. HTLC stands for hash time locked contracts. And these contracts essentially are responsible to lock the tokens which should be swapped and then unlock them only if like a cryptographic proof is being revealed. A proof which shows that, well, the swap happened essentially. And the proof can be verified by both parties and has to be revealed by both parties. And if this does not happen on time, then, well, the swap will not happen because one of the parties can then say, no, okay, this has been now too long. I don't want to do the swap anymore. It's super simple to implement and trustless because it's directly peer-to-peer. However, it's quite slow because you always have to wait for the other party to essentially reveal the secret. And as the name suggests, it's a swap, so only an exchange of tokens possible. It's not like a transfer of tokens, meaning it happened, for example, between Bitcoin and Monero. It was possible to swap Bitcoins for Monero coin, or however it's called, but you would not be able to transfer Bitcoin into the Monero blockchain with that. It's only an exchange of two different coins. But it is there. It was being used and practiced in the past already. So it's one of the available solutions for something like interoperability. Then we have the federated two-way peg, another quite old but very known and popular choice. And there you have essentially a multi-signature account or a group of trusted intermediaries. So a group of people, a board or committee on both blockchains then, which are responsible to maintain a peg of the transferred token. So a peg essentially means if you have on blockchain 1 a token A and you want to send it into blockchain 2, then this group or these intermediaries have to be responsible for destroying then this token on the one blockchain and creating it or minting it on the second blockchain. And this is the peg. So to make sure that suddenly you don't have the same tokens on both blockchains, because that would be then something like a double spend, which obviously is not wanted. Again, this is quite simple and it's very fast because this trusted intermediaries group is kind of small and they can speak with each other quite fast. However, it is a small group, so it's not really decentralized. It's depends how big this group is, but in most cases that's 12 people or something, so it has limited decentralization. And of course, it requires trust into these intermediaries. One example is the Liquid network, which is being used to transfer Bitcoins between exchanges very fast, so that they don't always have to go over the real blockchain, and it's more like a side channel. But this works being practiced, and if the intermediaries trust each other, they can essentially do these interoperable transactions very fast. Then another one is called optimistic rollups. And here, essentially, if you have a side chain, all its blocks are optimistically posted on the main chain, but they're not being processed because else that would come with scalability sacrifices. But all these blocks always then have somewhat of a stake as an insurance. And for some time, this block of the sidechain can then be challenged if it's correct or not. And if it is correct, everything is good. And this is always assumed. That's why it's called optimistic rollups. But if it's not correct, then the person who challenged that block can receive the small stake as a reward. So there's always essentially an incentive to actually post the right sidechain blocks to say, okay, I'm honest, everything here is correct, because else the person is losing money. And well, this comes with quite a flexible approach because you can just post them and you don't have to wait. And it's very fast if the trust exists, if you trust the person posting the sidechain block. However, if you don't trust the person, you always have to wait for this challenging period, and that can be then again very slow. So it depends who's posting the sidechain blocks. But then again, it's also kind of centralized, because if you only rely on trusted people here in this case, then it's not that decentralized either. And it's kind of complex to implement, not that easy. It is being used on Ethereum, I think, already today, but not really as an interoperability solution again, but rather as a layer 2 solution. That means you have one sidechain which can then facilitate many different transactions. And after some time, it's being like a sidechain block is then being posted on the main chain of Ethereum, and all these transactions are then applied with that. So you can have like a layer 2 on which like many transactions can happen for cheap. But it's still Ethereum, and it's not really a new blockchain for the sake of transferring a token between different blockchains, but rather to, decrease the fees, because as I said before, Ethereum has quite a bit of a problem there right now. Then we have something with a very complicated name, Heterogeneous Charting. Here you have shards. It's a pretty popular term lately, because Ethereum is working with Ethereum 2.0 on shards, but not on heterogeneous charting, but then the homogeneous charting. But also Polkadot, a pretty big project lately, is also working on that. And here, essentially, every shard, that means like these sidechains, rely on a central shard for their security and interoperability. And as long as the central shard is secure, they are secure as well. So essentially, in Polkadot, for example, these shards are called parachains. And as long as the main Polkadot blockchain is secure and it's running, all these different parachains are running securely as well and can process their transactions. That means like all these different new parachains, they don't need to have their own consensus algorithm and have validators validating the blockchain, but rather just always rely on the central shard. This comes with certain advantages and disadvantages. Of course, it's very simple for new blockchains to be spun up because, they don't have to search for validators. And it's quite a universal method, meaning each of these parachains can just rely on this mechanism. But it's extremely complicated, really, really difficult stuff, like cutting edge, like research and cryptography. And the number of shards are limited. Currently in Polkadot, that's 100, because they all rely on the central shard and they're all getting their blocks validated there. Obviously, you're running at one point into scalability issues as well, and this comes with 100 parachains. I'm sure Polkadot is working on that to increase that number, but that's the status quo. And then you have our solution, cross-chain updates or CCUs. And here, essentially, these cross-chain updates follow a specific structure, which is understood by both blockchains. And in this structure, essentially, information about transactions can be included with the approval of each blockchain's validators. And with that, the blockchains know, okay, these transactions are valid, and they can act as if these transactions then happened in each of these blockchains. And that is extremely fast and efficient because you don't have to wait for a challenge period, or you don't have to wait for an intermediary group to accept it or something, because both of these blockchains are being constantly pushed forward. It's very scalable because, it's not limited to a number of sidechains. Like in Polkadot, you can have theoretically 10,000 sidechains connected to the Lisk blockchain, and send these cross-chain updates to all of these sidechains all the time. It's universal because each of these sidechains can use that. Even other projects are able to use our solution, and more about that actually also later. However, it requires a relayer. So someone who's sending such a cross-chain update which essentially collects all transactions which are meant to be sent from the main chain to a side chain and then post it onto the side chain. So someone needs to do that. In most cases, probably it's just someone who wants to facilitate that cross-chain transaction. However, that can be anyone. That's a disadvantage. And of course, it requires that both or all blockchains actually follow this protocol one by one. So here we have less flexibility, but this is the case for anything mentioned before as well. But yeah, I'm pretty proud about that solution. I think it's fantastic, and I will go into more detail now here. So let's explain you a bit more about how this all works. And again, it's a bit complicated, but I keep it very simple. So essentially, before we start explaining you the solution, I want to just let you know how much work that was and what went actually into that solution. So in 2019 at Lisk.js, we revealed 35 Lisk improvement proposals, which are somewhat like research papers. And they came with various protocol improvements, like a new consensus algorithm, a new fee system, a new address system, and like a new multi-signature system, so many changes. And we are very close from publishing that to our blockchain now, 1.5 years later, because at that time only the research was revealed, and then it got implemented with an external security audit, confirmed that it's secure, and then also QA'd internally. We're hitting testnet quite soon, and after that going to mainnet. So that happened before. But then from that point on, we focused on interoperability. And here we started with, first of all, like a state-of-the-art overview. So what you saw before, essentially just analyzing the existing methods and functionalities available. And I just gave you 1% of what we researched. The researchers we have, it's like 5 PhDs, super intelligent people. They can tell you so much more about that whole topic, but they essentially checked what solutions are available. And then together with my partner and myself, they sat and discussed, okay, where do we want to take this? Because we're building a platform here, so it has certain directions it should take. Well, that's pretty important that we come up with something which is supporting our vision and mission with Lisk. With that information, they then sat down and specified everything, had some more meetings with us as well in between, and then they wrote these LIPs, these Lisk improvement proposals or research papers, which got then published on Lisk.js 2021, which was just recently on the 21st and 22nd of May. And well, these LIPs, we divided them between core LIPs and supporting LIPs, where the core LIPs, which are like 12 of them in total, cover the complete interoperability specifications. That's the old slide. It was, of course, not presented today. It was presented at Lisk.js, but I go into a bit more detail later into these core LIPs. And it got published the day after Lisk.js on the research forum, available on research.lisk.com. Where you can take a look. We are currently collecting community feedback, and then once we got enough feedback, publishing it as a full-on specified lib on GitHub with a number, so it's like kind of cemented and fully published. And then next to these 12 core libs, which really include the complete interoperability solution, we also have like supporting changes which have to be introduced to our protocol. And here we're talking about 14 supporting libs. 5 of them already got published on the research forum before the event. And in the coming weeks, we will publish the other 9, which just like introduce a few other changes in our protocol required to be able to implement the core libs. And all these libs are defined in 8 roadmap objectives, which we're working on. These are the ones. It's the defined sidechain registration and lifecycle. As I said, we are a platform, so we want that sidechains register on our Lisk blockchain. so that we're also becoming somewhat like of an app catalog. We are aware which apps exist. Then the cross-chain messaging protocol, which kind of introduces this technique, how like the information of a transaction on blockchain 1 can become available on blockchain 2. Then something very complicated about state models and state roots, not so interesting for now. Then our Lisk BFT consensus algorithm needs to be updated. BFT stands for bits of fault tolerance. In our case, it's responsible to finalize transactions on the blockchain and cement them. And with that, I mean, after a certain time, it's impossible to revert a transaction once it's in. In our case, that's like 20 minutes later. And that's very important because if you send a transaction from one chain to another, you want to make sure to wait that period to be able to know that on the original blockchain where it's coming from, this transaction can never be reverted again. You might have heard that from Bitcoin or other blockchains, like a reshuffling at the end of the blockchain. That's why in Bitcoin you always have to wait like at least one confirmation, but ideally 6 confirmations to make sure that this block will not be reverted anymore with 99.999% probability. But in our case, it's then a clear like 100%. At least that's what I would say. Our researchers probably would disagree with this probability number, but it's like near 100%. Then we're introducing new token standards, ones for regular tokens and ones for NFTs, non-fungible tokens, because they obviously have to be transferred from one blockchain to another. Then again, something very technical to update the block header format. And then I talked about flexibility of our sidechains. So by default, we are supporting 2 consensus algorithms, which can be replaced by the developer. This is delegate proof of stake, which is already there today. And well, we are having this objective of introducing an alternative consensus algorithm, which is POA, or proof of authority, where essentially, I think very interesting for businesses, you can just define who is the validator. And these validators are then responsible to secure the blockchain. So that could be, for example, let's say we have the digital euro, and then in Germany we have the Deutsche Bank, the Commerzbank, N26, Solaris Bank, and a few others, which are then these authorities and make sure to secure the blockchain. Not sure I would trust that, but that's how it works. You have these trusted parties securing the blockchain then in this POA consensus algorithm. And last one is again very technical to enhance our signature scheme. Again, not so interesting for today. So let's dive into that whole Lisk interoperability topic then. The basic idea is, again, you have a Lisk main chain in our case and a Lisk sidechain. And now you want to send transactions, let's say from let's just say from the main chain to the sidechain, or from the sidechain to the main chain. Then these transactions actually emit something called a cross-chain message. And these CCMs basically signal that this is a transaction meant for another blockchain. And these messages are then gathered and posted on the other blockchain as a CCU, a cross-chain update. And a bit more detailed, it means when you have all these cross-chain messages, then on the sending chain, they are being gathered into one certificate, and then a relayer relays that certificate in a cross-chain update to the other chain. So they post it on the other chain, but this cross-chain update includes the signatures of the validators of the sending chain. So on the sending chain, it was basically confirmed already and proven that these transactions which happened, which information is available in the cross-chain message in the CCM, are all valid. That's why the relayer can just post it on the receiving chain, let's say the side chain, and assume this is all good. This is like safe. And here, however, we need to wait then for these 20 minutes that the sending chain is essentially reaching a finalized status and nothing can be reverted anymore. So that, we are running into, we are like 100% secure. That's essentially our interoperability solution. So again, you have transactions on the sending chain, let's say Lisk transactions, which are meant to be sent into a Lisk sidechain. And like here, I'm talking about the LSK token sent from the main chain to the sidechain. And each of these transactions meant for this one sidechain have like a cross-chain message with all the information in it. That means proof that it's all properly, like that the owner of this LSK actually has them, the amount, the recipient, whatever it is, the receiving chain information, and so on. And then a relayer, again, takes these messages, puts them into a certificate, and include that certificate into a cross-chain update, which is a new transaction on the sidechain, to make sure that these transactions of LSK tokens meant for the sidechain can then on the sidechain be credited to the user and then used there without any problem. Okay, pretty complex, but that's how it works. And well, for us, there's a whole journey behind the sidechain, and it starts with bringing it to life. So essentially, this is a registration transaction in which you, on the main chain, register your sidechain or your blockchain application. And there you can give it a name. Let's say we are calling it a prediction market. And then each of these registered sidechains have an ID of the genesis block and of the sidechain. And the genesis block is essentially the very first block of a blockchain. So in the case of Bitcoin, you might have heard that the genesis block has a quote in it, which is being taken from the front cover of a newspaper of 2019 about the financial crisis back then. And that's the genesis block, the first block of the Bitcoin blockchain. And in our case, you're spinning up new blockchains with your blockchain application. So you also have a genesis block. And well, to make sure that when you're facilitating a cross-chain update, a cross-chain transfer, and it should always arrive at the right blockchain. So this genesis block ID is used then to compute the sidechain network ID, so that when you facilitate these token transfers cross-chain, you always send it to the right sidechain and not to another one, which might be malicious. And then during registration, you also have to include in that registration the sidechain validators, which will send the first cross-chain update from the sidechain to the main chain in order to signal, I'm alive. But that's all pretty much automatic. You will not have to worry about that as a user, but as a developer, that's pretty important. And these, some of these values, like a genesis block, for example, you can just simply auto-generate with the Lisk commander, which I mentioned before is one of the products within the Lisk Sdk. All right, and then once you registered your sidechain with this new transaction, your sidechain account is created on the main chain. Don't get confused by account. It's essentially just an object saying this sidechain now exists with this ID, with this name, and so on. And when you do that, you have then essentially established one connection. And that means from the main chain to the side chain. And just quickly about this chain ID, on the main chain, then each side chain has such an ID, and it's just being counted up, while the ID 1 is the Lisk main chain itself, and then every side chain gets just 2 or 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. And this is just needed in order to know which chain is which, because you're dealing with an underlying protocol, it somehow needs to know where it's sending the cross-chain transactions to. And if we're going the other way around, I mentioned now a link is essentially established from the main chain to the sidechain. However, you also need to know on the sidechain then where the main chain is. So you have a similar registration on the sidechain as well, where you define the main chain. So it finds the tokens always find the way back essentially, but this is kind of also automatic. You don't have to do a lot here. It's all provided for in the tools we provide in the Lisk Sdk. So with that, we essentially have a registration process where a developer can say, okay, hey, I developed my own blockchain application. I now want to register it on the Lisk blockchain application platform. They go to our Lisk wallets, click like essentially add a blockchain application or register a blockchain application, insert these few values like a name, for example, and then it's live, it's registered, and they can at one point then decide to turn the blockchain, the sidechain on. That doesn't have to happen immediately. It can also happen at a later point. And that's what I just was talking about. It can also be like happen at a later point, this activation of the sidechain. This will happen essentially with the first CCU posted, so that, well, then the main chain knows, okay, now it's an active sidechain. Before that, it's not an active one, but these cross-chain updates always have to happen to signal to the main chain, okay, here the sidechain is alive and kicking and has still a user base. And if we are now talking about how to send from one sidechain to another sidechain, then we decided to have something called main chain routing. That's where like the main chain is always in the middle between. That's why the Lisk blockchain, I called it initially, is the centerpiece of our platform and ecosystem. So if you want to send a token now from sidechain 1 to sidechain 2, let's say sidechain 1 is like an NFT collectible game where you have something like a CryptoKitty, but then sidechain 2 is something like an NFT marketplace and you want to sell it. Then you have to go over the main chain into the sidechain again. And here it's again the same stories as before. You facilitate the transaction on the sidechain. With that, a CCM is being created containing all information. A relayer is including that into a certificate, and which is included in a cross-chain update on the main chain. And there then either directly or later, when another cross-chain transaction happens to sidechain 2, this information is then encapsulated again in a CCM, included into a certificate, and that certificate is then posted on sidechain 2 in a CCU. So that's how sidechain to sidechain cross-chain transactions actually happen. Then, talking about terminating a sidechain, I just talked about how you can register a sidechain, bringing it to life. But at one point, it might also be over for a sidechain, either because it has no users anymore, it's not secure anymore, it's not being maintained, or just dies, whatever it is. And for that, we introduce something like a termination. On the one side, we have something like a forced termination, because we think if such a CCU, a cross-chain transaction, is not happening at least for 1 month, then the sidechain is actually not participating in the ecosystem and is not needed to like waste space in on the nodes of the main chain. So that's why after 1 month of being inactive, it's being terminated. And now you might think, okay, hey, but what if that's actually to my disadvantage because the sidechain is still active? Well, you can always just post a CCU quickly. It's very cheap. It will then have actually no cross-chain transactions included maybe. But that proves then, hey, the sidechain is still alive. However, if a sidechain is not alive anymore, the users really have to have a means to be able to retrieve their tokens. And that's part of this termination process why we decided to have that. So as soon as like this connection or sidechain is terminated, you will not be able to send any more tokens into this sidechain. But if well, the most important thing is that you then actually send the tokens out of the sidechain, right? Well, here it just quickly describes that, well, this termination can also happen if a sidechain is malicious and it tries to send malformed data. For example, tries to send tokens to the main chain which actually don't exist. And there's a mechanism in place which detect that in order to make sure everything is secure and safe. However, once it's terminated, it's disconnected. And you cannot send any more tokens into the sidechain. That's okay. However, you want to take the tokens out of the sidechain, of course. Either you have stored NFTs there, LSK tokens, or other tokens. You want, of course, be able to retrieve them. And for that, we introduce a new transaction type called the sidechain recovery transaction. And that's a fully trustless, secure, on-chain process how you can get the tokens then back. It's not something centralized when the developer of the sidechain has to do something. It's fully decentralized, on-chain, and trustless. And essentially is the mechanism to be able to retrieve tokens from a sidechain back to either the main chain or its original sidechain it stemmed from. And well, this recovery mechanism will be able to prove that you're the owner of certain tokens, like an NFT or just the LSK token, for example. But this recovery mechanism can be conducted by anyone. It doesn't have to be even you. So if you're less technical, you don't know that maybe that mechanism exists. Someone else can do it for you and essentially recover every token on the sidechain at once. And I don't need to really go into detail here. It's, again, a bit more complex. But with that, it means, let's say you had quite a few tokens in a decentralized exchange. All these different tokens would go back to the original sidechain. You have some NFTs in the marketplace. They would all go back to, let's say, the collectible game they stem from. So you're fully protected from malfunctioned or inactive sidechains. However, all tokens which, well, originally come from that one sidechain, let's say you have something like an Oracle chain, and this Oracle chain has its own Oracle coins. Well, if the Oracle chain is being terminated because it's not secure anymore, it malfunctioned, or it's not active anymore, and that's why it's being terminated, then these tokens are kind of lost as well. However, if there's a situation where this termination actually happened by mistake, because this inactivity was on purpose or something, then of course the sidechain still lives and continues. It's just not connected to the Lisk ecosystem anymore. But then if it's all running safely there, your Oracle coins are still available within the chain. You just cannot send them to another Lisk sidechain anymore. But then for that, you would have to register a new sidechain and make the initial token distribution same as on that one Oracle sidechain in order to be able to participate in our ecosystem again. So if we're taking a look at the whole life cycle of a sidechain, it essentially means you're first developing your own blockchain application with the Lisk Sdk. And once it's done, it's completed, you can generate the Genesis block, the first block of the sidechain. And with that, you can register your sidechain on the Lisk main chain. Then, well, you can wait a month, 2 days, whatever, before you activate that sidechain on the main chain with a cross-chain transaction, making the main chain aware that this sidechain exists. And then it's active. And users can send tokens around from the main chain to the sidechain and back. They can benefit from the use case and utility the sidechain brings. Let's say it's a DEX or an NFT game, whatever it is, and all good. And normally this should just go on for every serious sidechain forever, because the advantage of blockchains is as long as there's some people willing to run it, it can run forever, right? However, maybe the sidechain was not developed correctly, and therefore they sent some malfunctioned data, or it's just broken completely, and the blockchain is actually stopped after 1 month. Then it's going to get terminated, And that's where then the user can recover the tokens on it and, well, retrieve all their initial money back or NFTs back. And yeah, this is just like as a fail-safe, if a sidechain really is not behaving correctly. But in ideal situations, this should never happen. Yeah, that's the life cycle. So from A to Z, from beginning to end. But I think in most cases, the termination will actually not be kickstarted, because a sidechain should always be able to run forward. And then quickly again, just to give you this understanding one more time. So there's a bit of a noise here. So if you're sending tokens from one sidechain to another sidechain, this happens not directly. This happens more like over the main chain, like I explained before. And that's pretty important for us, because we want to establish the Lisk main chain as the centerpiece. And if now sidechains communicate directly, it gets very complicated with different token states in different chains. And then the other chains are not really aware how many tokens are where. But also because with our wallet, we really want to provide this user interface which enables you to benefit from our ecosystem. And this will create then synergies between the different sidechains being active in our ecosystem. And for that, I want to tell you a little bit more about the advantages blockchain interoperability brings. So in the case of Lisk, so I mentioned that before with flexibility, but you can also say it's customizability. The advantages of, having interoperable blockchains instead of having your dApps on one blockchain from the beginning, like in the case of Ethereum, is essentially you can have tokens in your sidechain, and they can easily be moved between the different sidechains. So there's no disadvantage in that. But you also, on top of that, can pretty much change anything in the blockchain you created. So you can replace the consensus algorithm. We already said we are having delegate proof of stake, DPoS already, and are currently working on the proof of authority consensus algorithm, which was the 7th objective on the slide earlier. But you can also introduce like an inflationary reward, block rewards, or like decide to not have them. You can reduce the block time and so on. Then it's somewhat like a unit. There's an ecosystem being created, because if you now have different blockchains, it's like different ecosystems, right? You have, let's say, the Chainlink army, the Ripple guys, which is maybe not really a blockchain, but then Bitcoin, Ethereum, Lisk, Monero. You have all these different blockchains, and it's somehow like each of these blockchain communities, it's like religion or something. They're really big fanboys of their own blockchain, but they hate every other blockchain. It's not always the case, but online it often appears so that this is the case, because everyone has a financial incentive to, push their own investment, their own blockchain to the sky while destroying the other projects. I don't like that, and that's why interoperability is so important, because that will create like some kind of an ecosystem. And in the Lisk case, of course, here in the illustration, this is just shown between the Lisk blockchain and all these different sidechains being created on our platform. Else you would have, again, the same situation. You could create a new Ethereum, a new Monero, or whatever, a new Polkadot, a new Cosmos with the Lisk Sdk, but we don't want it. We want them all to be connected. But then the ultimate goal is, of course, to connect then all these blockchains, again, to other ecosystems, like connecting them to the Ethereum ecosystem, to the Polkadot ecosystem, to the Cosmos ecosystem, and so on. So yeah, this is pretty important for interoperability to happen then, that this sense of ecosystem is there. Because, I think projects are suffering from this competition, while there are many crypto projects out there doing a tremendous job in innovating this technology, and we all have a purpose to be. And and we should actually rather benefit from each other instead of suffering from each other. In the case of Lisk, now to come to this slide, so in our sense, it's of course also an ecosystem. That's our whole idea of having a platform. And the LSK token is being used as like the common ecosystem token. So this will be the main choice for every sidechain. And on every sidechain, you have to pay the transaction fees in LSK. Of course, because the sidechain is created from scratch with the Lisk Sdk, a developer has full flexibility and can say, okay, no, I don't want the LSK token. I want only my own token. That's also possible. But by default, it's LSK. Because it's much simpler for the user experience, as it's written here also, everyone has the same address because of shared cryptography in every sidechain and the main chain. And then it's just much easier that you only need the LSK token for the ecosystem to operate. You don't need this new coin to use the prediction market. You don't need that new coin to use the Oracle system or that new coin to use the DEX. No, just LSK for every single blockchain application. And yeah, that creates this simplification. We're all about making blockchain accessible. So user, in the best case scenario, only needs LSK. And this, of course, will also drive the demand up for the token and make it a much more successful cryptocurrency, widely used. And that, well, means it's on more exchanges. Users, again, are easier to get into our ecosystem, buy themselves a few tokens just to participate in the use cases these sidechains then deliver. And just a quick example to show you the power of interoperability. And well, in this case now, you might feel like, okay, it's the Lisk main chain and the sidechains all Lisk, but really it's different blockchains. You could even say if, for example, Bitcoin implements that, you could facilitate that between Lisk and Bitcoin, or then Bitcoin to Ethereum and Ethereum to Cardano and Cardano to Cosmos, these kind of things. But now to keep it simple, the Lisk main chain and different sidechains in our ecosystem. So let's say you have LSK token and you want to exchange them for BET coins. And for that, you send them into a decentralized exchange and facilitate that swap. And then you want to use these BET coins to participate in a prediction who the next winner of the Nobel Prize is. So you're sending them over the main chain into the prediction market. And there they stay, the Lisk tokens, waiting then for another sidechain, an Oracle sidechain, to be aware of who the winner is, and feeding or relaying that information then, which is also interoperability, but just without a token transfer, just an information transfer, to the prediction market to resolve the bet. And well, of course you won, so you won some more LSK tokens because other users bet on another Nobel Prize winner, and you get part of their tokens then in this case. And then you have more LSK tokens. You can send them into a gaming chain to participate or buy an NFT, whatever. So you see, all these different blockchain applications can then interact with each other, creating a very strong synergy. And well, I always compare it to like a brain which just grows like with more functionality, more use cases. And with every new sidechain plugged into the main chain, essentially more utility comes to the platform. And I think that's like where the true power lies, and where we today don't even realize what will be able or what will be possible with interoperability, or thanks to interoperability. But it's very important to keep in mind that if you have these sidechains, they are independent, but thanks to interoperability, not isolated. What does that mean? So independent means, I mentioned that before already, if one sidechain becomes extremely successful, let's say it's a decentralized exchange, which is the most popular use case on Ethereum currently, and it's hitting the limits, the ceiling. It cannot process transactions anymore for cheap because it has 6 million transactions per day, theoretically more. Then, of course, this owner of the sidechain could spin up a second decentralized exchange and relay some of the traffic over there. It's similar like back in the day, World of Warcraft also has multiple servers, right, to distribute the traffic. However, the most important aspect for our ecosystem or platform is that no matter how busy one sidechain is, all the other sidechains don't even realize that because they're independent. They're like their own distinct blockchains. So they never suffer from very popular blockchain applications. We had a few years ago CryptoKitties, which showed that or revealed that problem on Ethereum, that one application became very successful and the entire platform became very expensive to use because the fees rose. In our case, this would not be the case. So that's one of the big advantages. And that plays into, well, general scalability. If these transactions are separated away into their own separate blockchains, then of course, like you have a much more scalable platform. I mentioned before, like we successfully tested 75 transactions per second per sidechain. You could have 1,000 sidechains connected. That's 75,000 transactions per second. Throwing these wild numbers around, of course, is not always helpful. But in this case, you have to imagine it's spread between 1,000 different chains. That means 1,000 different networks. So this is like reality and not just a high number for marketing purpose. And then, but of course, this will come then with a huge number of nodes. It will be then a very big thing if we will have in the future 1,000 sidechains. But then because of this fragmentation or like, not isolation, but like focusing the transactions of different apps into their own sidechains, the fees should generally be much cheaper. The reason why fees on Ethereum are so high is that each block in the blockchain has a limited amount of transactions it can include. So everyone is just competing with all the other participants on getting their transaction in. And the miners on Ethereum, which create the block, of course, always choose transactions with the highest fees because the fee goes to the miner. So that's where like something like a competition starts or like an auction, and the highest fees get included. Now, if you have 100,000 transactions, but only 1,000 transactions fit into a block, of course, people are going to ramp up the fee until their transaction gets included into a block. But if you don't have that many transactions and every transaction users send can actually directly be implemented or included in a block, then users don't have to compete with higher fees and the fees stay generally low. Checking the numbers, we are like 20x away from the most successful use case on Ethereum. So with that, I think we have a very long way to operate cheaply and efficiently. And like I said, in the worst case, a sidechain can always spin up a second sidechain to distribute its traffic a little bit more. But then the most important thing, all these independent blockchain applications or sidechains, they can interact and benefit from each other. So that means like a DEX, well, can accept all these different tokens in the ecosystem and can make exchanges possible. The prediction market can get information from an oracle system. It's all connected. And I think that's pretty powerful. All right, that's interoperability. I tried to explain some stuff again and again to make it a bit more simple to understand. But you maybe have like noticed a few weaknesses in our own solution. And that's essentially our next steps for Lisk research. Because now that we spent all that time from Lisk.js 2019 to now Lisk.js 2021, 1.5 years, researching our initial interoperability solution, coming up with these 5 supporting libs already published, 12 core libs published at Lisk.js 2021, and then these 9 additional supporting libs coming in the next few weeks, we needed to just check, okay, where can we improve our solution? We have to start with something, but always possible to improve it. And well, that's where we introduce this milestone 5, like a new phase where interoperability is improved. And there we essentially have 3 goals. To reduce the time to finality that plays into the BFT consensus algorithm, where I said before it takes like 20 or 25 minutes or so on average to cement a transaction on one chain, so it's never be possible to revert that. And that's important if you send a transaction into another chain. So we need to reduce that time, of course. And this relayer, which was one of the disadvantages of our solution, where someone has to actively post a cross-chain update onto another chain, which of course is a transaction and costs a little bit of money. Well, there's no incentive for that unless the person, the relayer relaying that information is actually someone who actually sent a transaction from one chain to another. So we somehow need to incentivize that person so that everyone in the network actually wants to relay these cross-chain updates. And sidechains are that flexible and that customizable that the fee system, which I explained before with the auctioning and the competition for competing to get included into a block, because sidechains can be that customizable, we need to generalize our fee system a little bit more. But there I will not go into details in the following slides. That's unrelevant to interoperability. And then, I already hinted towards it. That's just the first step, Lisk interoperability, to be able to connect sidechains to the Lisk main chain. But we think bigger. We think that we need to establish interoperability to third-party ecosystems as well. And candidates here include Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano, and Cosmos. So these we think are the most prominent blockchain application platforms currently available, with, of course, Polkadot and Cardano still being heavily in development. Cosmos is a little bit further ahead, and Ethereum is live since quite a while. And this is like the holy grail for me, to establish interoperability with projects like these in order to bring all their utility also to the Lisk platform. So let's go quickly into a bit more detail. So reducing the time to finality. Like I said, if you want to transfer from one sidechain to the main chain, or from a main chain to a sidechain, you need to wait that until these transactions are final, or that the blockchain is finalized when you were at the time of when you were sending the transaction, so that both chains know by nearly 100% that the transaction sent actually is valid and that the user still has it. Else you could send a transaction into a sidechain, but then very quickly after, a transaction to another account on the main chain, and then because of the time gap, it would be accredited to the sidechain, but also to the other account on the main chain. So it's a double spend. So you always need to wait that time. Here it says on average 26 minutes. I think it's around that, like 26 minutes. We now have the goal to decrease that time. So by introducing a new BFT consensus algorithm, which reduces it to 1 or 2 blocks, that means like 20 seconds, which would make it blazing fast to send cross-chain updates or cross-chain transactions. And of course, that comes with a better user experience, because you don't always want to wait like half an hour to use the sidechain's utility. However, I actually think this is not like super required when we start, because you might send some LSK tokens into a sidechain and might take half an hour, but then you leave the tokens there, you use the use case, the utility of that sidechain, and maybe days or weeks or maybe never later you're going to send the tokens back. So that's like just a user experience improvement, but I think for the utility of our platform, not really necessary to do, but of course should be done to make it better. Then this relayer incentivization. So the person who's relaying the CCU currently is not being incentivized. They actually have to pay a small fee to be able to post that transaction. So now we need to provide a good incentivization mechanism so that users have a high chance of getting their cross-chain transactions relayed faster. Again, kind of a UX situation. Again, it's just about improving our solution. And then the fee system I will not go into, but then the next phase will be blockchain interoperability. with candidates including, like mentioned, Ethereum, Cosmos, Polkadot, and Cardano, where essentially we are building then our own sidechain or blockchain application, which is connected to these ecosystems, so that, for example, you are able to send Ethereum or ERC20 tokens from the Ethereum ecosystem to that sidechain we are creating, and then it's within the Lisk ecosystem, and then you can send it to any other sidechain to exchange it on a decentralized exchange, for example. We believe this is super helpful because then Lisk also becomes something like a second layer solution for Ethereum, and then Ethereum can benefit, for example, from the cheaper fees on the Lisk platform. Users can benefit of having only one wallet, the Lisk wallet installed, for example, because there they can also hold any ERC20 token on Ethereum itself. However, then as these packed tokens or wrapped tokens within the Lisk sidechain we are creating here. I think that's the true goal. If you're looking on our website, we have published just recently a new roadmap with gemstones as their own distinctive phases. We're currently in the Emerald phase with these protocol improvements I mentioned before. When they go live on mainnet in quite relatively soon, then we are entering the new phase, the Sapphire Phase, which is about Lisk interoperability, with the research completed. Just these two improvements there still being implemented then later. And that's where all the development work is being targeted to right now, to implement Lisk interoperability as soon as possible. And then after that, it's the diamond phase where we're implementing blockchain interoperability. This research will start later this year. And I'm quite curious what our team will come up there with. And for Lisk, very quickly, the next steps goes also a little bit to the past. We just launched lisk.com. We had the domain lisk.io before, but we're finally, after 5.5 years, able to get the com domain as well. Came with a little bit of a website refresh as well. We had Lisk.js 2-day event targeted to developers. Generally, Lisk is a tech project, so you see the whole presentation was a bit more complicated. With that, we launched our first online hackathon called Hack on Lisk. More information on hackonlisk.com, which goes still until 23rd of July, where you can use the Lisk Sdk to participate in it and build your own blockchain app. Prices are $33,000 in total. Then we launched a Lisk grant program, where if you are a team of 2 at least and you want to build a blockchain application with the Lisk Sdk, you can get $66,000 from us to start building. It's divided in milestones because we want an ecosystem with great use cases. So we are supporting teams building these use cases. Then, like I just said, Lisk interoperability implementation has just began immediately after Lisk.js 2021. And well, currently I'm in the Lisk Center Berlin. If you take a look, that's written at the wall. It's based in Berlin, as the name suggests, and it's a co-working space where everyone can just come and work from here. We have coffee or other drinks available for free. We have internet here, a meeting room, also with a ping pong table there. We have some more games. Raspberry Pis, a 3D printer, a paper wallet printer. We have the Lisk wallets installed here on the computer and on the phone. You can just use it as a shared space to exchange ideas and to talk with other people about blockchain. It's not Lisk exclusive. We have also a stage here with a big projector to be able to facilitate meetups. So if you want to have a meetup, you can just contact us and use this space then for your own meetup, either blockchain related or programming development related. Everything for free, like I said, and we have the same thing also in Utrecht in the Netherlands. So once, COVID-19 is over and we are allowed to open again, I hope in July, please come over. It's at Köpenicker Straße 126 in Berlin. I think it's Kreuzberg Mitte. So make sure to check that out, but you will hear about it when it opens. And then Lisk mainnet version 3, that's with all these protocol improvements I mentioned before, the new fee system, the new address system, the new consensus algorithm, and so on, which research was revealed at Lisk 2019, will launch this fall. Then after that, because it comes with a complete new API, we're going to also getting listed on more exchanges again, to simplify the onboarding of people into our ecosystem, because they will require the LSK token to use it. And then at the end of the year, again, like an in-between update annually called Lisk Updates, where then you can hear more about our progress made on the research and implementation of interoperability, and also about our own blockchain applications, which we are starting to develop. Finally, this was always our goal, that at one point we're actually then also implementing new blockchain application use cases, which are then being used by the people on the street, and bringing them like real advantages. I said in an interview before, my dream is that someone on the street just opens their Lisk wallet and actually benefits from blockchain technology. And here we have 3 blockchain applications planned. The first one is something called the Lisk Bridge. That's this blockchain interoperability to another ecosystem. Let's say, for example, Ethereum, so that you have every token of Ethereum available also in the Lisk ecosystem, and they can benefit then from, let's say, a DEX in our ecosystem or an NFT marketplace or whatever it is. And then 2 other DeFi applications where we cannot say much more right now because it's still pending legal opinions and more research before we want or can reveal more. So a lot is happening. A lot was said. That's it with my presentation. Thank you so much. And now I'm available for some questions. It was super complicated. So I hope you got everything. And Max, wir können es auch auf Deutsch machen.
Ja, genau, richtig. Wow, vielen Dank. War mega faszinierend. Der Coworking Space öffnet, sobald Corona das zulässt, ne?
Ja, genau. Ja. Der ist offen, sobald Merkel sagt, ihr könnt wieder öffnen. Ich denke im Juli, also jetzt die Zahlen und so sehen sehr vielversprechend aus. Man kann ja schon Events haben bis 100 Leute, aber wenn wir öffnen, wollen wir auch öffnen und dann offen bleiben, ohne jetzt hier irgendwelche Risiken einzugehen.
Sehr cool, ja. Ich habe auch gemerkt, viele Zuschauer sind auch die ganze Zeit über dran geblieben. Also ich glaube, du hast die auch gecatcht. Und jetzt nochmal an dich als Zuschauer. Schreib auf jeden Fall, wenn du Fragen hast, die jetzt sofort in den Chat. Ich habe auch noch ein paar Fragen aufgeschrieben. Genau, und wir haben jetzt noch Fragen von M4Log. Will the Lisk, okay, das ist jetzt eine englische Frage, aber gut, gucken wir mal. Will the Lisk Sdk also be compatible with other programming languages in the future, or will it remain with Java?
Ja, also die Frage geht dahin, ob das Lisk Sdk kompatibel mit anderen Programmiersprachen sein wird oder nur mit Java. Einerseits ganz kurz, Java ist eine komplett andere Sprache als JavaScript. Also was komplett anderes. Da gibt es einen Joke, ist so wie, die haben so viel miteinander zu tun wie Car und Carpet. Das ist einfach was ganz anderes. Aber danke für die Frage. Also wir sind total darauf fokussiert, Blockchain accessible zu machen. Und JavaScript ist die meistverbreiteste Programmiersprache der Welt. Das können Millionen von Leuten. Essentiell jeder Programmierer kann JavaScript auch. Heutzutage fast jede App, die man benutzt, nutzt auch JavaScript. Also irgendwie Slack, Trello, was gibt's noch? Einfach so viel, auch auf dem Handy, so viel nutzt einfach JavaScript heutzutage. Und es fühlt sich auch sehr nativ an. Also es ist wirklich eine Sprache der Zukunft. Und deswegen haben wir uns von Anfang an dazu entschieden, wir bleiben rein bei JavaScript. Das heißt, unser komplettes SDK ist implementiert in JavaScript, weil es einfach fast jeder kann und es mit bestimmten Vorteilen kommt. Zum Beispiel, du musst JavaScript nicht kompilieren. Das heißt, du kannst es direkt laufen lassen, du kannst es im Browser laufen lassen, du kannst es auf jedem Gerät mittlerweile laufen lassen, ohne es für dieses Gerät speziell kompilieren zu müssen. Aber wenn du mal so in andere Projekte guckst, ein SDK ist wirklich komplett der Baukasten mit allem, was du brauchst für deine Blockchain-App. Aber dann alle oder viele andere Projekte sagen, okay, aber wir haben ein SDK in 30 Sprachen. Das ist gar nicht das SDK mit all diesen Bauteilen. Das ist dann nur ein Wrapper, welcher die API abbildet in einer anderen Programmiersprache. Und da haben wir auch Community-Projekte, die das schon implementiert haben, in Go, in Java auch, ich glaube auch in Rust, bin ich mir nicht sicher gerade. Aber das ist nur die API als Wrapper. Aber als SDK an sich fokussieren wir uns auf JavaScript. Und das kommt mit so vielen Advantages einfach, weil wir uns voll und ganz dann halt auch auf dieses JavaScript-Ecosystem konzentrieren können.
Sehr, sehr cool. Danke für die detaillierte Antwort. Genau. Hier fragt noch jemand aus einer, ich glaube, Investorensicht. Und zwar, ich denke, der ist auch sehr fasziniert vom Vortrag gewesen und fragt sich jetzt, wie es dann sein kann, dass Lisk jetzt von seinem All-Time-High von $35 so jetzt wieder auf so einen relativ niedrigen Kurs für den Wert, den es eigentlich bietet, gefallen ist.
Ja, er sagt von $35 auf $1. Ich glaube, lass mich mal kurz gucken. Gerade sind wir irgendwie bei 3,20 oder so, noch vor kurzem bei 11. Krypto ist halt super volatil. Und wir als Lisk Stiftung, was hinter dem Projekt steht, wir kümmern uns um die Technologie. Wir denken, Blockchain an sich ist extrem früh noch. Mittlerweile hat irgendwie jeder von Bitcoin und NFTs gehört, aber die wenigsten halten Krypto. Und ich habe jetzt mir einen neuen Bankaccount gemacht bei Revolut. Die sind jetzt vielleicht nicht oft das perfekte Beispiel, weil man die Krypto nicht runterziehen kann, aber es ist halt relativ weit verbreitet. Und dann habe ich mal gefragt, wer hat denn über Revolut schon Krypto gekauft? Die wenigsten. Und das zeigt mir einfach, Krypto ist noch in seinen, Kinderschuhen. Und wir sind einfach deswegen komplett fokussiert auf Technology, auf Use Cases, damit Leute von dieser Technologie benefiten und nicht einfach nur spekulieren. Lisk als Altcoin ist natürlich extrem volatil. Das hat angefangen beim ICO, haben wir es rausgegeben bei 8 Cent. Dann kam es auf fast $40 und dann wieder runter, jetzt auf $3,20. Aber da liegt halt einfach nicht unser Fokus. Wir dürfen auch relativ wenig Sachen machen mit der Stiftung im Bereich Finanzen. Wir zahlen Exchanges nie Listing Fees. Wir betreiben aktuell kein Market Making, haben noch nie Market Making betrieben. Wir fokussieren uns wirklich auf unsere Plattform und darauf, dass es einen Nutzen bringt an die User, weil, wie gesagt, Blockchain ist noch ganz am Anfang und wir müssen mit unseren Funds auch noch die nächsten 5 oder 10 Jahre zurechtkommen, weil ich glaube, erst dann wird Blockchain richtig Mainstream. Deswegen von der Investorenperspektive, ich würde Lisk einfach als Langzeitinvestment sehen dann und so oder so in Krypto investiert man nicht einmalig eine große Summe und das war's. Wenn, dann investiert man jeden Monat eine kleinere Summe und das über die nächsten 10 Jahre, wenn man daran glaubt, dass Blockchain als Industrie hochgeht und da bin ich schwer von überzeugt. Aber ja, ich habe natürlich keinen Eingriff in die Märkte, deswegen weiß ich auch nicht, wie das zu erklären ist. Wir machen gute Arbeit seit Anfang an. Wir sind eines der aktivsten Projekte auf der Development-Seite. Wir publishen jede Woche Blogposts, um Leute dazu informieren, was bei uns passiert. Wir bauen eine Community bei Discord auf. Wir haben jetzt dieses Lisk Center hier in Berlin. Wir haben eins in Utrecht. Das heißt, wir brechen auch in die reale Welt ein damit. Unser SDK nach 3 Jahren, von 2016 bis 2019, existiert dann jetzt schon seit 1,5 Jahren. Aber damit halt wirklich Applications gebaut werden, erfordert es noch die Interoperability. Die wird jetzt angekündigt und wird jetzt implementiert. Ich denke mal, nächstes Jahr sind wir mit einer Beta-Version dabei. Das heißt, wir haben kontinuierlichen Progress und mehr kann man, denke ich mal, nicht machen.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ja, ich glaube auch, es ist einfach ein gutes Zeichen, dass man auch bei schlechtem Kurs trotzdem weitermacht. Das Projekt gibt es ja jetzt schon sehr, sehr lange, seit 5 Jahren. Ich denke, das ist auch gerade jetzt als Investor, glaube ich, eher eine Stärke, würde ich so sehen. Weil, keine Ahnung, wenn jetzt Lisk total overvalued wäre, dann kann man als Investor gar nichts holen. Aber jetzt wäre, glaube ich, dann ein sehr guter Zeitpunkt. Genau, ich habe auch noch ein paar Fragen so aus so einer, also wir haben jetzt nicht nur Investoren in der Community, sondern auch Leute, die jetzt sagen, okay, ich bin selbstständig oder ich möchte mich selbstständig machen, vielleicht auch im Bereich Blockchain, weil ich da die Zukunft sehe. Wo würdest du sagen, können die jetzt am besten anfangen mit Lisk?
Also am besten anfangen, denke ich mal, tut man einfach dabei, Blockchain zu verstehen. Und zwar nicht nur oberflächlich, sondern wirklich tiefgründig. aller Anfang ist schwer. Ich würde einfach mal das Bitcoin White Paper runterladen, ausdrucken, lesen, online aktiv sein in den verschiedenen Kanälen und sich einfach mal so, auf Englisch sagt man, make your hands dirty. Einfach mal so anfangen, mal eine Wallet runterladen, egal welche, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Lisk, ein paar Tokens kaufen, die hin und her schicken. Und so fängt man einfach mal generell an mit Blockchain. Wenn jetzt jemand schon ein bisschen weiter ist und sagt, okay, ich möchte mich selbstständig machen in der Blockchain-Industrie, dann kann ich aus meiner Perspektive natürlich nur Eigenwerbung machen und sagen, okay, hey, wenn du noch einen Partner hast, bewirb dich mit einem Pitch-Deck, einen Businessplan und so ein bisschen Intro über die Leute, die dabei sind bei uns, beim Lisk Grant Program, bei dem du $66.000 kriegen kannst, um deine Blockchain-Application zu entwickeln. Milestone-basiert. Das heißt, du kriegst am Anfang direkt mal ein bisschen, kannst dein Projekt kickstarten damit und dann je Milestone kriegst du dann mehr Geld ausgeschüttet. Ich glaube, das ist ein relativ guter Einstieg als Unternehmer oder Entrepreneur in die Blockchain-Welt. Ist aber sehr schwierig, aber ich kann es nur empfehlen, bei mir war es sehr erfolgreich.
Ja, klingt sehr, sehr gut und da kann man auch eigentlich auf das Center, das ihr jetzt in Berlin und Utrecht habt, zurückgreifen, nehme ich an.
Ja, auf jeden Fall. Also sobald wir offen sind, einfach vorbeikommen, kannst uns Fragen stellen dann, kannst bei den Meetups dann mitmachen, kannst hier arbeiten, kannst jeden Tag reinkommen und sonst alles hier weg uns trinken und einfach hier dann an deinem Projekt arbeiten. Und ich denke mal, jetzt am Anfang wird es relativ leer sein wegen der aktuellen Situation, aber mit der Zeit wird sich das dann auch hier füllen und eine kleine Community sich gründen, wo dann ein Neuling einfach mal reinkommen kann und gucken kann, was machen denn die anderen, und vielleicht findet er so dann auch Co-Founders.
Sehr, sehr cool. Mega. Ich habe noch ein, zwei Fragen zu dem Vortrag gehabt und zwar mit den Sidechains. Also du hast ja auch gesagt, dass Sidechains auch andere Sidechains haben können. Wie weit geht das? Also können wir jetzt eine Sidechain haben, die eine Sidechain hat, die eine Sidechain hat, die eine Sidechain hat oder ist es unbegrenzt? Ja. Oder?
Also an sich, was ich meinte, ist, dass dann die Mainchain eine Sidechain hat und du kannst dann neben der auch nochmal eine Sidechain kreieren, die aber auch zur Mainchain connected ist, um halt dann den Traffic da zu beiden zu leiten. Aber natürlich kann auch eine Sidechain eine neue Sidechain haben. Das wird dann aber ein bisschen kompliziert, aber an sich geht das unendlich. Aber dann müsstest du ein paar Mechanismen von der Mainchain auch in die Sidechain implementieren. Es geht alles offen, alles da, aber wir fokussieren uns erstmal nur darauf, Mainchain zu einer Sidechain und wenn jemand dann mehr braucht, dann wieder eine normale Sidechain von der Mainchain und nicht eine Sidechain von der Sidechain. Aber an sich hast du da keine Limits. Ich würde es nur nicht übertreiben, weil wirklich Maximum gerade getestet war 6,5 Millionen Transaktionen. Das reicht. Also Uniswap hat wirklich den größten Use Case aktuell in der Blockchain-Szene. Realen Use Case, kein Fake. Und das sind ein paar 100.000 Transaktionen am Tag. Und dann mit 6 Millionen bist du da sehr, sehr gut bedient, glaube ich.
Sehr, sehr cool. Ja. Und fällt dir jetzt so spontan noch ein paar andere Use Cases ein, die vielleicht so den Zuschauern jetzt nochmal sehr direkt zeigen, okay, wo könnte es in meinem Alltag was zu tun haben? Oder auch, wenn ich jetzt als Investor agiere, warum ist es im Alltag sehr, sehr relevant, dass ich daran investieren sollte?
Investment, also man kann halt gucken, was sind Use Cases für Blockchain, die heutzutage schon benutzt werden. Und ich glaube, großenteils ist das einfach der DeFi-Space. Das heißt, Tokens, die irgendwie nutzbar sind in einem Decentralized Exchange, auf einer Lending-Plattform, in einem algorithmischen Stablecoin, in einem NFT-Marketplace. Ich glaube, das ist so ein großer Use Case aktuell, der Nutzen findet. Und ja, die ganzen Projekte, die driven halt Value und Value sollte dann irgendwann auch den Preisanstieg erzeugen, auch wenn es oft verspätet oder verzögert ist. Und ein anderer Use Case ist, denke ich mal, sehr prävalent Gaming, da will ich in Englisch reden, wo dann NFTs hauptsächlich benutzt werden als Collectibles, die man breeden kann, aber auch die irgendwelche Trading Card Games repräsentieren und dadurch halt ja einen bestimmten Value haben, weil sie halt rare sind, selten sind. Aber ja, Gaming ist ein anderer großer Use Case. Wir sehen aber halt bei beiden, dass die Nutzung relativ stark schwankt mit dem Preis auch. Das heißt, wenn der Preis hochgeht, wird alles auf einmal mega oft benutzt. Wenn der Preis runtergeht, dann eher nicht mehr so. Und wenn man den Nutzen, also die Nutzungsanzahl mit anderen zentralen Apps vergleicht, ist überall alles noch relativ gering. Aber wenn, dann würde ich sagen, diese zwei Ecken oder Richtungen für Blockchain-Applications werden heutzutage schon relativ stark genutzt im Vergleich zu anderen Sachen.
Sehr, sehr cool. Also wenn ich jetzt sagen würde, ich würde ein neues Trading-Game entwickeln, könnte ich denken, okay, das ist gut, wenn das online oder wenn es vor allem dezentral stattfindet, dann nutze ich jetzt Lisk für, weil ich da praktisch schon alle Tools für habe und genau.
Genau, ja. Du könntest halt dann unser Lisk Sdk benutzen, um deine Blockchain zu bauen, wo dann jede Karte ein NFT ist. Und dann hast du halt dein Game, du kannst einfach dein Spiel einfach so abhalten, sowas wie Magic the Gathering oder sowas. Aber dann bildet sich natürlich ein Sekundärmarkt für die Karten. Bei Magic the Gathering ist das passiert, bei Pokémon, bei Yu-Gi-Oh!, überall. Und dann kannst du aber es ermöglichen, dass die Karten direkt auf der Blockchain auch versteigert werden können, verkauft werden können. Baseballkarten zum Beispiel haben ja extrem hohen Wert, aber da müssen die Leute zum Teil über die ganze Welt fliegen, um die Karte dann abzuholen. Mit Blockchain ist das natürlich anders. Aber natürlich ist das dann etwas rein Digitales. Wenn wir jetzt zum Beispiel in die Welt der Kunst gehen, da sehen wir dann oft auch, dass Künstler ein NFT kreieren, aber dann im Realen auch nochmal das reale Gegenstück haben, wo man so eine kleine Plakette dann irgendwie noch drauf hat mit einem QR-Code, welche dann zu diesem NFT linkt. Aber das sind alles ganz coole Use Cases und definitiv alles machbar auf unserer Plattform dann mit dem SDK.
Mega cool. Und wenn ich jetzt in LSK in die Währung investiert habe, dann profitiere ich natürlich auch davon, wenn mal viel stattfindet auf den Sidechains, weil ich praktisch, also dann partizipiere ich mit davon, wenn zum Beispiel dieses Trading Card Game nachgefragt wird, nehme ich an.
Ja, also ich mag es so ungern über Preis zu reden, aber jetzt sagen wir mal so, es gibt aktuell 140 Millionen LSK-Tokens. Und die Hälfte ungefähr wird aktuell benutzt, um den Consensus-Algorithm zu betreiben, also dieses Delegate Proof of Stake. Also vereinfacht gesagt, die Hälfte wird gestaked auf unserer Plattform. Das heißt, es sind so 70 Millionen Tokens über, die entweder nur auf Exchanges rumliegen oder in irgendwelchen Wallets. So, jetzt hast du aber später verschiedene Sidechains, sagen wir mal ein DEX, der wie Uniswap ein Automated Market Maker ist, wo man Tokens locken muss, um halt die fürs Market Making zur Verfügung zu stellen und dann earnt man oder man kriegt dann einen kleinen Teil der Fees, die dabei zustande kommen. Und wenn jetzt Lisk irgendeine Sidechain hat, die ein DEX ist, der implementiert auf diese Art ist, verschwinden halt auch nochmal eine ganze Menge LSK-Tokens in diese Sidechain rein. Und dann hast du ein anderes, was zum Beispiel ein NFT-Game ist, wo dann auch nochmal ein paar LSK-Tokens drin sind, damit die User einfach, sagen wir mal, sich irgendwelche NFTs, kaufen können, ersteigern können. Und dann hast du 100 Sidechains, wo überall ein paar Lists drin liegen. Und das irgendwann resultiert natürlich in etwas, das nennt man aktuell Liquidity Crisis, Liquiditätskrise, dass du halt einfach auf den Exchanges dann nicht mehr genug LSK-Tokens hast, weil die alle in den Sidechains für die Utility benutzt werden, für die Use Cases benutzt werden, gelockt sind. Das ist dieser famous Begriff Total Value Locked, TVL. Der ist halt relativ hoch in den Sidechains, aber dann auch nochmal auf der Mainchain mit dem Consensus-Algorithmus. Und mit unserem Update jetzt auf Mainnet Version 3 werden auch die Tokens wirklich gelockt beim Staking. Vorher war das nicht der Fall. Jetzt wird es gelockt für die Validatoren auf dem Netzwerk 1 Monat lang und für alle, die dann für diese Validatoren wählen, ein paar Stunden lang. Das heißt, irgendwann kommst du zu dieser Liquidity Crisis und das heißt, es gibt einfach nicht mehr genug LSK-Tokens auf den Exchanges für Leute, die kaufen wollen. Und das ist dann jedenfalls aktuell immer so der Fall, dass der Preis dann richtig hochschießt, weil dann die Leute einfach mehr gewillt sind zu zahlen, weil es halt einfach nicht mehr so viele LSK-Tokens gibt. Das ist so eine Theorie, die passieren kann und ja, auf die viele Leute, denke ich mal, in unserer Community als Investoren auch bauen werden.
Danke für die Antwort. Genau, da fragt M4Log, ob du schon Grandmaster in Magic bist.
Leider nein. Ich arbeite zu viel, keine Zeit zum Zocken mehr.
Ja, sehr, sehr cool. Ja, bei mir war es dann auch Yu-Gi-Oh! Als Trading Card Game, nicht Magic, aber...
Ja, bei mir auch damals. Yu-Gi-Oh! Immer viel getradet und gezockt und davor Pokémon, aber das nur getradet, das hat ja keiner gespielt, glaube ich. Ja. Aber lang ist es her.
Ja, bei mir auch. Genau, ich hab, glaube ich, noch mir eine inhaltliche Frage aufgeschrieben, und zwar, wenn die Sidechain stirbt und das recovered wird, dann reicht eine Person aus, die sagt, hey, ich benutze auch diese Sidechain und ich recover die, und dann bekommen alle das recovered?
Genau.
Cool.
Ja, also ich weiß nicht genau, ob das jetzt eine Person kann. Ich glaube, die eine Person muss sagen, wer recovered wird. Das heißt, eine andere Person kann auch deine Tokens recovern. Aber es heißt nicht, dass wenn jetzt eine Person diesen Recovery Mechanism Transaction schickt, dass alle automatisch recovered werden, sondern dass es eher so ein spezifischer Prozess ist. Aber eine Person kann das dann auch einfach freiwillig für alle anderen machen. Zum Beispiel jetzt wir als Stiftung könnten sagen, okay, hey, hier war jetzt diese App, die ist jetzt terminated worden und ein paar User in der Community beschweren sich, die haben ihre Tokens nicht bekommen, dann können wir auch diese Transaktion schicken und die Tokens dann für diese Leute recovern. Weil alle Informationen, die dafür notwendig sind public, die hat jeder.
Okay, sehr, sehr
public key. Ja.
Klasse. Genau. Ja, perfekt. Vielen, vielen Dank. Falls jetzt keine weiteren Fragen mehr reinkommen, genau, ihr habt jetzt noch kurz die Chance zu fragen. Sonst gebe ich euch auch nochmal die Information. Wenn ihr euch bei Kryptopia.cash registriert, bekommt ihr jetzt alle weiteren Events mit. Und das nächste Event findet um 12 statt mit Markus Gabor. Genau, und ja, Max, vielen, vielen Dank, dass du auch so viel Zeit genommen hast. Fand ich mega, mega faszinierend. Und ich bin sehr, sehr hyped auf den Space in Berlin auf jeden Fall.
Ja, ich hoffe, dich bald dann mal in Berlin begrüßen zu können. Und checkt einfach mal unsere Webseite aus. Wie gesagt, alles ist höchst technisch, aber ich hoffe, ich konnte euch so ein bisschen einen Einblick in die Materie schildern. Sorry, dass es auf Englisch ist, aber das ist für mich much more scalable, damit ich es später auch auf YouTube und so verbreiten kann. Wenn ihr noch Fragen habt, joint us bei lisk.chat. Das ist unser Discord-Server. Da könnt ihr dann nochmal unserer Community oder mir oder meinem Team alle Fragen stellen, die ihr auf eurem Mind habt. Und ja, bitte folgt mir auch auf Twitter und YouTube, weil dort dort poste ich immer relativ viele Updates zum Projekt. Dann bleibt ihr auch up to date.
Klasse. Vielen, vielen Dank. Dann beende ich an der Stelle den Stream. Danke auch fürs Zusehen. Ich finde es sehr, sehr cool, dass viele so lange dabei gewesen sind. Und auch M4Log sagt auch, danke für den Vortrag. Gut, macht's gut. Wir sehen uns um 12. Vielen Dank, Max.
Ja, danke. Ciao.